My mother told me never to sleep with the door closed. Now I know why. When I was little, my mother had one rule that she never explained, no matter how many times I asked. "Don't ever sleep with your bedroom door closed," she'd say, her tone more tired than strict. I used to think it was just one of her odd habits, like keeping every light in the hallway on or double-checking the locks twice before bed. As a kid, I followed it without much thought. But when I grew older, I started to question it. Privacy mattered more than rules, so one night, when I was 16, I decided to close it. Just once. Just to see what would happen. The house was old, and it groaned in the wind, but that night, something about the silence was different. It wasn't the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, it was the kind that presses against your ears, thick and deliberate. I remember lying in bed, staring at the thin line of shadow under the door, the way the faint light from the hallway used to stretch into my room like a lifeline. Now it was gone. Just darkness. I tried to convince myself it was fine. I tried to sleep. It must have been sometime after midnight when I woke to the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Dragging. Too heavy to be my mother's. They stopped right outside my door. I froze, holding my breath, listening to the faint creak of the floorboards as the weight shifted. Then, something brushed the door, like fingertips tracing along the wood. I thought maybe it was a draft, but then came a whisper. Low, rasping. Right next to the keyhole. "Why'd you close it?" My body locked up. The voice wasn't my mother's. It was quiet, hoarse, and unfamiliar, like someone who hadn't spoken in years. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I just lay there, watching the handle twitch once, then again. Slowly. The whisper came again, softer this time. "Open the door." I didn't move. I couldn't. Then, silence. The kind that feels alive. When I woke up the next morning, the door was wide open. My mother was standing in the doorway, pale and shaking. She didn't ask why it was closed, didn't say a word, just told me to get dressed. That day, she burned something in the fireplace, an old key, blackened and twisted, and muttered prayers under her breath. I didn't ask her what it was for. I didn't want to know. Years later, after she passed, I moved back into the house. It felt emptier than I remembered, though the walls still seemed to listen. The first night back, I slept with the door open, just like she taught me. But at some point, maybe from habit, I must have closed it without realizing. Because when I woke in the dark, the air was cold, unnaturally cold, and that same whisper crawled through the keyhole, soft and patient. "You shouldn't have closed it." I threw the door open, heart pounding. The hallway was empty, but the light bulb above flickered weakly, as if something had just moved out of sight. I barely slept after that. For weeks, I made sure the door stayed open, wedging it with a chair if I had to. But lately, I've noticed something strange. Every night, no matter what I do, the door edges shut a little more on its own. An inch. Then two. As if someone is slowly testing how far they can go. And tonight, it's almost shut. There's just a sliver of light left from the hallway, trembling faintly on the floor. I can feel the cold on the other side. I can hear the soft scrape of fingers near the keyhole. And this time, I don't think it's waiting for me to open it. I think it's waiting for the door to close all the way. I didn't sleep that night. I lay still beneath my blanket, eyes glued to the thin crack of open space between the door and the frame. The darkness beyond it seemed to breathe. It wasn't just shadows, it moved. At first, I thought it was a trick of my eyes, the kind that happens when you stare too long into the dark, but then I heard it. The faintest scrape, like nails dragging lightly against wood. Slow. Patient. The sound came from the other side of the door. I held my breath, praying it would stop. But it didn't. It grew closer. Louder. My heart pounded so violently that I could feel it shaking the mattress. And then came the whisper. So soft that I almost believed it was inside my head. A voice, low and dry, said, "Close it. Please. Close it." I wanted to scream, but the sound locked in my throat. The air in my room turned heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. I could see the faint outline of something standing behind the door, pressed close enough that its shadow spilled through the crack. Not quite human. Too tall, too thin, its fingers stretched unnaturally toward the light leaking from my lamp. I couldn't move. My mother's words echoed in my skull like a desperate warning, never sleep with the door closed. Now I understood. The door wasn't meant to keep something out. It was meant to keep something in. The thing on the other side was waiting. And it was patient. So terribly patient. The whisper came again, this time a little sharper, almost pleading. "Close it. I can't come in if it's open." My skin crawled. It wanted me to close the door. It needed me to. Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't. My lamp flickered, once, twice, and for the briefest second, I saw it. A pale, hollow face pressed against the crack, eyes like wet glass, mouth stretching too wide, smiling as though it knew I saw it. The light died, plunging the room into silence. I hid beneath the blanket, clutching it to my chest, afraid that even the smallest breath would draw its attention. Then came the sound of footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps, circling my bed. I hadn't heard the door move, but somehow it had entered. My pulse thundered in my ears as the air grew colder and heavier. The smell of rot filled my nostrils, thick and suffocating. A voice, the same whisper, now right beside my ear, said, "Your mother was smart. But she can't help you anymore." I could feel it leaning over me, its presence pressing down like the weight of the ocean. I forced my eyes shut, praying for morning. When sunlight finally touched my face, I thought it was over. The door was still ajar, just as I left it. I didn't see anything inside the room, no shadow, no shape. But when I looked at the wood of the door, my blood turned cold. Long, deep scratches carved down its length. And written into the grain, as though burned into the wood itself, were the words, "Thank you for not closing it." That night, I found my mother sitting on the porch, staring at the trees. She looked older, her face drawn and pale. When I told her what happened, she didn't look surprised. She only said, "It followed me when I was your age. I thought leaving the door open kept it away." Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "It's not the open door that keeps you safe, sweetheart. It's what's inside that stops it from crossing." Now, every night, I lie awake, staring at that sliver of light between the door and the dark. The whisper hasn't returned, not yet. But sometimes, when the wind dies and the house goes quiet, I swear I hear faint breathing from the hallway. Like it's still there, waiting for me to forget. Waiting for me to close the door. And when I finally fall asleep, I dream of that smile, stretched wide across a pale face in the dark, whispering, "Now you understand." That night, I woke to the faint sound of something brushing against my wall, a soft, rhythmic scrape, almost like fingertips dragging across plaster. The air was thick and unmoving, and for a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. But then came the whisper, clearer this time, crawling out from the darkness, "You do understand now, don't you?" I froze. My throat went dry as my eyes darted toward the door. It was still open, just barely, the same thin crack of safety my mother had always insisted on. But something about it was different. The darkness behind it seemed closer, thicker, as if it were pressing against the threshold. I could almost feel it watching me, its attention so tangible it felt like fingers resting just above my skin. I tried to steady my breathing, to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the whisper came again. And this time, it wasn't behind the door. It was inside the room. I could hear it moving, a shuffle of bare feet on the cold floorboards, a dragging sound like someone pulling their nails behind them. I dared to pull the blanket down an inch and saw the faintest movement near the foot of my bed. The air itself seemed to shimmer and bend. My heart pounded so violently that I thought it might draw its attention. The room smelled faintly of damp earth and decay, like the air that escapes when you open a grave. Then came the slow creak of wood. The door. It was closing, inch, by itself. Panic tore through me. I leapt out of bed, but my body felt heavy, sluggish, as though something invisible was pulling me back. The whisper turned into a low, gurgling laughter, guttural and wet, like it was coming from deep inside the walls. "You're tired," it said, almost lovingly. That's when I come closer. My eyes burned with tears as I stumbled toward the door, reaching out to stop it before it shut completely. But before I could touch it, something cold wrapped around my wrist. The hand, if you could call it that, was thin and rubbery, the texture of something once living but long since rotted. I tried to pull away, but the harder I struggled, the tighter it gripped. My vision began to blur, and the whisper pressed close to my ear, "She knew. She always knew. That's why she never slept again." The light bulb above my bed flickered to life for just a moment, casting a weak glow across the room, and I saw it fully for the first time. It was standing half in shadow, half in the trembling light. Its face was wrong, impossibly wrong, as though someone had tried to remember what a human face looked like but failed. The smile was too wide, the teeth too many, the eyes glossy and lidless. It tilted its head as it stared at me, and the grin twitched wider. Behind it, the wall bulged and rippled, as though something inside was pressing to get out. My knees gave way, and I hit the floor. The door was still closing. Slowly, deliberately. I reached for it, my fingertips brushing the wood, and the whisper hissed, "Let me show you where the others went." I don't remember what happened after that. When I opened my eyes, it was morning again. The door was open, wider than before, and my room looked untouched. But the wood around the hinges was warped, as though something had been clawing at it all night. My mother was gone. Her room was empty, her bed unslept in, her things scattered as though she'd left in a hurry. On her pillow was a single, dark handprint, burned into the fabric. And carved into the headboard, deep and jagged, were 4 words, "She closed it once." Now, every night, I leave the door open wide enough to see the hallway. I don't sleep much anymore. Sometimes, I hear my mother's voice calling from the dark, soft, trembling, begging me to come closer. Other times, I see her silhouette standing just beyond the door, unmoving, her head tilted at that same unnatural angle. I know it isn't really her. The voice doesn't sound quite right anymore. Too hollow. Too patient. I think it's waiting for me to forget, waiting for the night I fall asleep too deeply to notice the door slowly, silently swinging shut. Because lately, I've started hearing a new sound, a whisper that doesn't come from the hallway, or from the dark beyond the door. It's coming from inside the room, from the corner where the light never seems to reach. And when I listen closely, it says the same thing over and over, almost tenderly, like a lullaby, "Close it, and you'll finally see what's been waiting for you."